is Ankita. Thank you everyone for joining us and removing your precious time. We will be starting exactly in a minute. We already have architect Milind Pai join us with us. Um, Vasan has already shared the instructions, so I would request everybody to keep your videos and audios off. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, good evening, Ankita. I'm good.
I
Hope
hope I'm.
everyone is good and safe.
Yes, yes. Hope you're also safe and sound.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
much.
We'll just wait for a minute and then we'll start. I would
Sure,
again
sure.
to thank you for removing time for us and sharing your experience. We are looking forward for today's session. We just
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
for
Thanks a lot.
yeah. Thank you so much.
Our audios are quite clear, no?
Yes, yes. So,
Okay, thank
yes. Once again, welcome to Architectonic. We will be starting the session, which would be spaces and stories. Before starting the session, I would like to quickly give a quick introduction on architect Milind Pai. So, architect Milind Pai is a degree holder from Sir J.J. College of Architecture and is currently the chief architect of the firm Milind Pai Architects and Interior Designers, which is a well-established brand name in the profession of architecture and interior design. Ever since the establishment of his firm in 1987, he has been constantly adding values and expertise to its think tank. A perfectionist by nature and with an uncompromising flair for innovations, he has been constantly adding new milestones for his firm. For architect Milind, design is a passion, and this is one reason he has never hesitated to accept projects in various verticals, as long as there is designing expertise involved, right from the outset. This has led to the firm being a multi specialty firm and targets multi specialty under the same brand name. On a personal note, Milind sir loves to travel a lot and has been to several exotic destinations around the world. He likes to study the varied cultures around the world and also loves photography. As a person, he loves meeting new people and interacting with them. This is also being the one important trait that has led the firm to complete projects in 30 cities and India and 5 internationally. Wow, sir, that's and we all would be excited to know your stories, your travel stories, and everything. Uh, since we've given an introduction, we would like to play a small video which will throw some light on architect Milind Pai's entire journey. So, sir, we can have the video. And after that, I would invite Mr. Sameer Chaudhary to welcome you. Post your video.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, so first and foremost, this is not actually my entire journey. It's just a very quick glimpse of what kind of projects we are currently doing, so that the audience is little aligned as to know what our firm is all about. Yeah,
So, sharing the video, right? Yeah.
yeah. I starting it here.
I, the screen is not getting shared. We'll wait for a few seconds. Or maybe there's some lagging.
Do you want me to stop it again?
We can't see the screen.
You couldn't see the video at all?
Yeah, we just couldn't see the screen. I think it wasn't shared.
Okay. So I'll start it again. We'll give it one more shot.
Sure.
Can we see?
We will wait for a few seconds, so it takes some time.
Okay.
I cannot cannot.
Okay.
I think it worked fine when we tried. Didn't try maybe some bandwidth issues. We'll wait again.
Gita, if sir wants to share his screen, he needs to switch off the video because video is giving
No, sir, we
preference.
have tried it in the evening. It worked absolutely fine. So with the video also we have tried, sir.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Nowadays we
problem.
are having this kind of technical problems
Yeah. I mean,
with the videos. Yeah,
promise
no
me.
issue, no issue.
So, do you
Yeah.
want to try turning? Do you want to again try screen sharing? Because I think it did work fine when we did the trial in the afternoon. I'll keep my video off once and let's see, sir.
You want me to do it again?
Yes, sir. If one more time, if we can just try, because after that also there are going to be some.
Just switch off your video. Just switch off your video.
Can we see it now?
No, sir.
No, sir. Do one thing, sir. Just on screen there is a share button. Share your desktop, then it will come.
I think there is some bandwidth issue. Maybe we want to try. You want to try it sometime later because we are.
Yeah, it's not a problem. We can continue without the video, not the issue.
No problem. I would like to welcome Mr. Sameer Chaudhary. He's the head of the department.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, Sameer.
Hello, Architect Milind. How are you? Good evening.
Yeah, I'm good, Sameer.
It is really nice to have you here today in this program of Architectonic. It is difficult to spell, but I will try to spell it correctly, Architectonic. And I think it is our 6th or 7th program. And then for every program, we have been looking forward to what next and we generally struggle to what next topic to be kept. And fortunately, every time we have been able to work on some topic which is a new topic, and this time too, with your journey and the interior designs which you have done, I think that will be a great thing for a learning for our audience here, where we'll be able to take this topic of spaces and beyond, and then see that how well we manage our spaces and go do well with our spaces. So once again, welcome to this forum, this program, and we have been able to create this property with the help of good architects like you, and then we would wish to continue this and for our larger audience of architects and interior designers on this forum. So good evening again. Once again, we will give back to Ankita to carry the proceedings of the program further.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes, so Milind sir, as Sameer sir already mentioned that this is we've already conducted 6 editions before, and this is the 7th edition. Every time we've had some specific topic regarding be it light or art. This time we have a very different and interesting topic, which is spaces and stories, sir. And as your introduction goes, that you've been traveling a lot. So, sir, for the benefit of the audience, so when you talk about spaces and stories, what kind of spaces do you like to design? And if you have any story to share with our audience, your travel stories or anything which relates to your design.
Yeah. So, Ankita, I'm planning to make it just like a very candid and casual talk, and not really, getting into technicalities and all, because most of our audience are architects and they know their own field very well. So, I would like to start by saying it's been a long journey of about 33 years, for Milind Pai Architects, and in which we have covered almost all the verticals, you can say. So we have worked on schools, hospital, boutique retail, boutique hotels, and any good designing avenues we have tried to work upon it, because there are two philosophies to it. One is we didn't want to get bogged down into one single style of working or a single vertical of working, and we wanted to get explored into different zones and keep our life interesting. So every time you get a new project, you do a lot of R&D, you do research, and you approach it in a totally different way. And currently, we are sort of focusing on boutique designs and luxury interiors. So that's what our current forte is. So having done that, I wish you had seen the video so you would have got some idea of what kind of projects we are doing, but it's fine. I think some of them must be knowing also what project. But now coming to the point, what kind of designs we like. So, professionally, you have to keep a different front, but as a person or as your own psychology work, there are always something that you really enjoy doing. And when you like doing those things, you don't look at it as a growth or economics of the project or whatever. It's just that you surely love doing. And for me, that zone is designing schools because fortunately, unfortunately, we have ended up doing many school projects actually, and we don't really publicize that as our main forte, but we just love working on them. So, what happens in school projects, especially the kid zones and all, we get a lot of opportunities to vent out our designer that is built inside us because any other project, there are a lot of rigid parameters that you need to follow, and you have to be technically sound and you have to follow clients' instructions. But in school, what happens is,
Sorry, sir.
yeah, no problem.
So you'll have to unmute. So you'll have to unmute because we've put everybody else on mute. So you will have to unmute it. Yeah. No problem, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So in school, what happens? We get to do a lot of free forms and write of colors, and we can invent ideas, and nobody stops us there. And in fact, there is always a struggle in our own office as to who will work on these kind of projects. Because after doing something very, very stereotype over a period of time, you need to do something different, and it should give you some kind of fresh feeling. So I'm just going to share a few pictures. And the pictures will only speak for themselves as to what is the fun we have actually, in doing those kind of projects.
Yeah.
So first you want me to share the screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I hope you can see my screen.
We'll wait for a few seconds, sir, or maybe because we have a lot of people joined in. So even the bandwidth, we'll just wait for right now. We cannot see your screen, but now yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah, okay.
So I think, sir, you can play the video as well, which you wanted to play before, because now since the screen sharing is enabled, maybe the audience would know. Yeah.
Fine. So let me start by doing that. Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay,
sir.
lovely. So I think it's given us some idea as to what kind of projects we are into. And now I'll share you these pictures which we are in the middle of the discussion. Yeah. So I'll start with this. It's only 5-6 pictures which I want to share with you guys. So this is the school we are doing right now. It's about 3.5 lakh square feet in Mumbai, and so these are some of the areas. Like how we design and how we enjoy the work. So if you see the beautiful forms that are in the furniture of this is a area called Lego room actually. So the idea of having this kind of design, the kids should feel absolutely out of the box place when they come to school, and there are stories which we hear kids don't like to go home and all those things. So right from sourcing out furniture like this, which has to be done from exotic places which are not in the country also at times, to working on the mural like this, where we have actually engaged the school art teacher into getting this concept and working personally with his own hands on the wall. So these are the kind of experiences that we take when we work with the teams in the school. And of course, there are classrooms where we want to make it very dynamic and we play with forms and colors. Like here, we are using a very basic hexagonal form for this particular classroom. Every classroom has its own theme, but I'm not getting into too much of the project. But just to give you an idea as to how and why we enjoy doing this colorful spaces. So it actually transforms us back to our childhood days. And sometimes we wonder if we were born today, we would have also enjoyed an ambience like this. And these are the art rooms. So see the colorfulness and the ideas that we use on the ceilings. And we have to actually make a whole list backwards as to what things can be sourced and what needs to be done in the on the site. And what are the small technicalities. For example, this is the art room. So how we will hang the art, how we'll give a wall where people can actually paint with their bare hands, and there's some signages. The soft board where you can display your art. And again, we play with the loose furniture like this. The previous one we are showing a different kind of a furniture. So there are these stainless steel tray details, where in an art room you can put your wet brushes and all that. So this kind of very specific detailing has to be worked out in understanding the function of the place. So yeah, so this is like a very interesting informal setting. And this is the area where again you can run loose into the shapes and the forms and the materials, and get the total childhoodness out of you into this place.
Yeah.
So this is also one of the other angles, and how we make the barricades, how we segregate this thing from the routine areas. Yeah. So I'll come back to our screen again.
I mean, the pictures
Are
were
we are we back, by the way? Have we stopped the screen share?
Yes, sir. Now your video is there.
Yeah. Sorry. This little technical thing. No problem. Yeah. Ankita was saying something. Ankita, did I lose you? Yeah.
Because of the rains, that the bandwidth is playing up. Yes. So, sir, we did see the pictures, and I'm sure it was a treat to everyone's eyes. So it's very clear that schools are something which are very close to your heart, which we could see from your images as well. However, sir, we would like to know one particular project which was quite challenging and unique. I'm sure as an architect, it becomes very difficult for an architect to pick a right hand or a left hand. So I'm sure all your projects are very close to your heart. But one project which might be very challenging, and what were the challenges?
Yeah.
It might be anything like, from convincing all the stakeholders to anything.
Yeah. So, Ankita, I would first like to go back in time, and you mentioned the travel stories also before.
Yes.
So, as you rightly mentioned, we have done almost 30 to 35 cities all over the 30 in India and 5 abroad. And I think very few firms could have this kind of unique distinction of doing projects in so many places all around the country and this thing. So, some of the few things I want to start with is, how a few lessons I learned in my life at the earlier ages. And I'm sure some of our experienced audience must have gone through it very well, but the young one must be actually going through it. So first thing that I learned when I passed out was, you cannot be just like your college days and You cannot be like a informal. Now that you have become a professional, people judge you by how you look and how you carry yourself. And there are some of my clients who actually educated me. This is not the way you should be coming dressed, if you're an architect. And that kind of personal touches and good one-to-one training was imparted to me after I finished my college education. So having learned something on how to carry yourself and what kind of clothes you should wear, what kind of watch you should wear, and I'm sure most of our professionals carry ourselves very well. But from a middle class background, a boy who comes and somebody teaches him, it feels very nice, Somebody is actually taking interest in you because they like your work. And so how people judge you is one thing, and how you should judge people is another thing. Like one unique experience, since this is about stories, I want to tell a small story as to when we were just doing a very small office project in Fort, and I was standing on site and instructing my contractor, aisa karo, aisa karo. So one gentleman walks into the door and he starts looking on the site all around, and he asked me, "Are you the architect?" I said, "Yeah." And few questions he asked me. Then I looked at his attire. So this guy was wearing a very simple clothes, and he was wearing a rubber slipper. This guy is holding a kapde ka thaili in his hand, and I was getting disturbed. How can this fellow ask me so many questions? And he's talking in very polished English, but he looks like some very ordinary person. I don't want to actually describe what thoughts came in my mind, but I was kind of getting disturbed. But I kept my patience, because he's asking me such intelligent questions. And after a few minutes of this kind of a discussion, then he told me, "Would you like to come to Bangalore?" So I said, "Of course, but what is your work actually? What are you calling me for?" He said, "No, I have got 3 villas in Bangalore, and I want you to come and design it for me." So he judged me in my 10 minutes discussion, looking at my work and the kind of interaction I was doing and the way I answered him. And I wouldn't have believed this guy is really talking sense. I thought he's just somebody trying to fool around. And you'll not believe, it was in 88, he kept a 5,000 rupees bundle in my hand, and he told me, "This is my card, and you give me your card, I will send you the flight tickets." And that was my first outstation job, one of the biggest outstation job I could have dreamt about at that time. And that's how my outstation project started actually. So this is one learning which I got. I'll never forget it. I had already judged him. I thought, I will kind of ignore him or give some answer to don't disturb me. I was almost on the verge of doing that, and that was a big lesson I learned at that time. You never judge people by their looks. And another thing is like you have to be very friendly, and that's how you become a good professional and you make contacts. So kind of at that time we were thriving in projects because there are very less of competition, and you will not believe, in one building I was almost doing 20% of the tower ka project. So everybody in the building knew me, who stayed in which flat also. Till today I know by heart. So that is one more thing I learned is, you'll be very friendly and you'll be very warm. And then also I realized one more thing, if you become over friendly, that is also a big problem. You have to keep a professional distance. And if you don't do that, then they try to make you a part of their family, which obviously means you don't get paid well. And then you get to hear dialogues like, "अच्छा अगला project में आपको proper fee देंगे, ये fee में अपन कम करते हैं, हमारा circle is very big and you will get more jobs." So these things happen if you get too close. So these are the few interesting things that happen, and I think it happens with everyone. So having done that, it was a huge journey. We used to do projects in Mumbai. We started doing projects outside. We got connected one after another. We love traveling. But one particular project which I did coming to the challenging part was in Andaman. I just took it up like just one of the projects. And this particular project was a villa on the sea face on a rocky terrain actually. And it was kind of a project where client wanted that my family is growing big, so don't disturb this part of the bungalow and you build around it. So the first briefs itself was very challenging. So it is not like it was a huge project, but the way it was built and the way it was located was itself in a challenge. Then you have to modify it. That was another challenge. And then one more challenge we faced, I think I heard somebody in the audience also has done some project, some hotel in Andaman. So what people need to know is this kind of terrains, when we work upon, it's fun to visit. But when you work on projects, it takes today if I select something, that from that day onwards till I get it landed on my site is a period of 2 months. So we had to plan so much in advance for each and everything. All the labor had to be flown down to Andaman, and once they fly there, they cannot fly back until the client buys the tickets for them again backwards. So these kind of things were faced by us for the first time, And with this place is also connected very well with Mumbai, and sorry, not Mumbai, Calcutta, Vizag, Chennai. So we used to do selection from all these three places. Traveling also I has to manage in such a way. Supposing I'm Calcutta, I used to fly from Calcutta. If I'm somewhere in Vizag, I have to fly from Vizag. So it was such a unique situation that we faced for that project. Is I'll always remember it was so complex the way we handled and finally finished the project in such a nice way. The client actually gave us another project of a hotel. It was a refurbishing project. So you face such challenges when you are not ready for challenges. So you take a project like just one of the projects, and suddenly you are faced with situations which you are never anticipated, and you rise to the challenge and do a good job. And it actually turned out to be one of our very good projects at the end of the day, because we also got involved and we took up the challenge and went out of the way and worked on that very passionately.
True. Thank you so much, sir. I think that explains quite a lot. Sir, you did mention a story of your and the client which was in Bangalore. So, as rightly said, that do not judge a book by its cover. So, yes, that's a good takeaway for all of us. However, sir, during this current situation, which is like a 1 in 100 year situation, psychologically, a lot of people get affected, be it the customers or the architects, interior designers, for that matter, even we, or everybody around us getting psychologically affected. So, having said that, sir, I just wanted to understand that what is the psychology when it comes to designing spaces in general? And is the psychology gonna change post this pandemic? Is there going to be any change in it, or how is it going to just your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so for us, the philosophy has always been we are designing for the occupant and the end user. So we never try to dictate our design instincts or our preferences on our client, because uh, at the end of the day, if we don't study the client's perception, because see, we are actually designing for his aspirations, dreams, lifestyle, and also for his future milestones. 15 years, 10 years in his life are going to be spent in that phases. So we are actually upgrading his lifestyle and creating situation for him where he is going to move in a totally different social context. So it's very important to understand where the client is coming up. One is the technical evaluation. What we normally do is how luxurious he want, how comfortable, what is his budget, and all that. But more important than that, when you are studying a client, you need to really analyze him thoroughly. There are different clients in the same scenario will have a totally different solutions of spaces. Like, for example, somebody is a different age group. So two people in different age group will have two different perceptions. Uh, Same thing will happen if based on their professional background. So somebody is a businessman and somebody is a doctor, they will have a totally different outlook. Also the kind of social circle that they are moving in, so it also plays. You have to really find out what is the background, what kind of people he moves around with, and again their culture in terms of religion, and what kind of community they are coming from. Also, so there is something called scale, because if you work in a B city, the scale is different. If in a city, or the scale is different. So many things play on a person's psychology, which it's not like a pure psychology. It's out of all the backgrounds that he's coming from. So you need to really understand the client very, very well. And if the psychology is not understood, you will not be able to satisfy him. Forget even the end product. Even with the presentation, you will come up with designs which are good, but he is not digesting it very well. So the first essential step of even start, before you start the conceptualization also, is understanding the psychology of the client, and then you start moving in the correct direction.
Yeah.
This is what you wanted to.
Yes, yes. And sir, do you think it's gonna change post this pandemic, the psychology of a client? Like, for example, right now we all are sitting home, and I'm sure no one of us have spent this much time in our own houses. So right now, a lot of nitty-gritties come in front of us, and we start finding flaws maybe in our own space. So do you think that, psychologically a customer, when he or she comes to y'all to get their renovation done, or, they would keep this kind of a situation in mind so that they are prepared? God forbid something like this never comes, but still they
Yeah.
want to they want to be prepared for the worst.
Yeah. So, Ankita, so basically we are more, collaborating with clients who are into luxury segment. And frankly, a lot has been spoken about the problems coming out of COVID and all. But I've seen the clientele who is coming is absolutely positive. They are not even thinking of this pandemic situation. It is we designers who are discussing and analyzing, anticipating things are going to change. And of course, there are going to be a lot of parameters that as designer we should consciously, unconsciously incorporate in our design later on. But if you strictly ask me, firstly, if the client is going through a bad patch and is in a negative state of mind, he's not going to come to us. So, having said that, all those who are coming, they have absolutely no consideration with the pandemic. They are actually thinking beyond that. They are not designing for this 1 year. They are designing for 10, 15 years later on. So they are actually using this availability of the architect and their own free time to create scenarios where they can focus on doing their houses and bungalows and offices. I'm not very sure about offices, so I take back my offices word.
Just a second, Vasan.
Yeah.
So we'll have to unmute now. Thank you. We'll have to.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry for the disturbance.
So the other, no problem. It's a part and parcel. Let us face it with the audience also.
Yes.
Let us be very open to these problems. So, so I was just talking to one of my close friends from BCT, and he actually told me in the COVID situation, you will not believe that we have started getting so much project and people are in hurry, and they want to complete the project very fast before they start getting into the work. So this is the extreme other scenario from what we are seeing in a luxury category. And where it's a business category, where it's supposed to be, multinationals or business houses, of course there is a issue there, and there we are not, getting any inquiries, and we are not starting off. And whenever we start designing these spaces, we are definitely going to keep all these parameters that we have learned during the pandemic situation for those projects. And even while we design the residential projects also, we cannot now afford not to look into these aspects. So we never felt in our lifetime we'll be going through this kind of a scenario in our living lifetime, And now that we have faced it, we have to keep some benchmarks for this kind of a situation anytime in future.
Thank you so much, sir. That was quite a positive approach towards this current situation. And so now our next question, since we have, for the benefit of all our architect interior designer friends who have spared their Friday evening and joined us, I'm sure 3D designing keeps going on among architects, interior designers. A lot of people keep on talking about 3D designs and all. So I just wanted to understand, what is the importance of 3D presentation while designing a project, and does it help? I mean, as per you, is it just a designing tool or a presentation tool?
Yeah. So, every designer has evolved some process of working for his office. So, it's all about how comfortable that person is working from his concept to the completion stage, basically. But now we are seeing more and more people have become demanding for getting this kind of a 3D presentations. And people who have not been used to doing it, they find it very difficult to convince the client to, no, this is not the way. You trust me and I will get it across, and I'm the architect, I'm the designer. So it all depends on how you are tuned to work and how you can convince your client. But if you ask in my case, right from the day one when we started our office, we have always been working on 3D. That time we didn't have a 3D Max, but we used to actually make tracing paper sketches with pencil. We used to Xerox it so that pencil sketches used to become thick black lines, proper black lines. And we used to do coloring and filling up all the materials and all with handmade color sketches. I still have so many of the sketches which I have kept. So this is the way we started our work, and we got tuned to working like that right from beginning. So in today's scenario also, we use 3D Max and all these kind of a 3D software. And we actually design in three levels actually. First level is we still make sketches and transfer them to 3D blocks. After we do the 3D blocks, we put in all the finishes and the ornamentations and what we want because the blocks are ready. And and the third level is what we do is we get into the lightings and how we can where we should keep the focus and what should be accent wall and stuff like that. So for a MPA, it is a very standard process of doing, but it does help in a way to do a lot of good presentations also. So because we have been doing for so many years, we are using it like a USP. So there was a long time back we should tell clients, if you work with us, we will be giving you 3Ds also, and it is inbuilt in the cost. Today it is no longer a situation. Nowadays everybody is doing that, and there's a huge industry of doing 3Ds nowadays. But even for the smallest client, supposing I've committed to them, okay, I'll do a 3D, then we'll put it in PowerPoint, we'll show them even materials on the 3D. But we also sometimes do very small gestures for the smallest of client. I just want to share with you a very small video
Sure.
and just see uh, what effect it has on a client when you send a small video as a token of appreciation after the design is done.
Sure. Yeah. So we cannot see your screen. Sir, unable to see your screen. I think because of rains, the internet everywhere is playing up. So maybe that's the reason.
Were you able to see this?
No, sir. No, sir. We were not able to see your screen. Again, it was not being clear.
I'll give it a one more different way of doing it.
Now we can see, sir.
You can?
Yes, yes, very much.
Okay, fine. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No problem.
Yeah, so I think everybody could see it now.
Yes, sir. We could.
Yeah. So the point I'm telling you is it does not require these kind of things for our office for very prestigious and very big projects. Even small projects, any tiny space in the project also we make sure everything is well understood in terms of design. So when you give something like this to a client, he's absolutely sure as to what he should expect and what is the what you say, a journey from concept till the completion. Our projects deviate to the minimum, and that also it gets on the better side, while we are selecting the material. So we are always improvising on our designs all the time, having convinced the client, okay, this is what you are going to get as a house. So it puts our relation with the client on a very positive note. I absolutely am a firm believer of 3D presentation, and of course my other friends may have their own ideas, because ultimately how you can convince your client and get your beautiful designs across is everybody's own process. So we cannot generalize for everyone.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much, sir. That was quite informative. Now, sir, I would like to invite Mr. Bharat Verma. He's a product manager from L&T. He would want to ask some questions from a manufacturing point of view. So, yes, Mr. Bharat Verma.
I think my. Hello, sir. Good evening.
Yeah. Hi. Good evening.
My video is not working. I think bandwidth issue is there. No problem. Sir, actually, I saw your 3D design also, and as you explained, you create so many spaces in for your clients, various different type of work also I seen. Especially your school work was amazing. Actually, I was just watching. There are vibrant colors you have used in spaces like schools and all any other places. One thing actually I want to ask related to design only. Uh, Whenever you create designs, is switches are also part of your design or it's not part of your design? One is that. And being a switch manufacturer, obviously we relate our questions to related to switches something. So when what is the stage when any switch manufacturer should approach to you actually? Because we also create some different designs based on your themes and all in switches.
Yeah.
What should be your approach actually? So you can guide us.
Yeah. So see, the designing when you're working project after project, so it's a continuous process for any office. So getting products into the office is also a part of that actually. So switch also will be, we need to know which company is having, what is the bandwidth of the range and what are the finishes they are offering. So we kind of start selecting our switches in 3 levels. One is when we are actually making our 3D design and we're making some kind of a mood board if required. So that is the time is one stage actually. And much before that, of course, there should be enough material with us before that also. But if we are not introduced to a switch before that, it's not going to happen very quickly, the decision making. But if we know this is the range of the switch available in the market and this is the kind of bandwidth they have, so already the company is there in the back of our mind. So then, of course, after that comes the mood board. Then the third level is the technology that is going to be used in that particular project. Because we all know nowadays automation has become very important for all the projects. So all switches are not compatible with automation, and if they are compatible, there is one unique problem that we face. There is a switch range which is automated, and there is a switch range which is non-automated. So when we have to kind of combine these two switches, for example, since you are in the switch industry, you will know there is a touchscreen, very high technology looking switch, which has got buttons on it, or what is a feather touch or whatever. And just next to it, there is a plug point. So we found a lot of companies are not developed the technology how to match the plug and the switch together. So we used to actually, place the switches and the plugs at different different locations so that they don't come next to each other. So these were some of the problems which we started finding out when we started using automation technology. And then, of course, at the third level, when you are actually designing your finishes, so that is the third level when we again fine tune our switch selection. For example, in our office, what we do, if there is a background of white wall, then we use white switches. And if there is a dark wall, we use the different finishes like metal and all those things. So the idea is either you magnify the design of the switch or you merge it into the background. So in our context, if the automations are there, then the switch boards also look very nice. Then we make sure they are visible, they are placed at the right location, they look like a part of the design. And if it is not there and there are too many switches, and all, obviously we try to hide them instead of showing them. So the whole designing switches philosophy rotates around all these factors actually. So is that answering your question, or you want to?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's definitely answering my question because, as you said, it's a part of design, but depending on if your theme is matching with the available switches or not, or that is also more important. But at what time actually, at what stage we should, as a switch manufacturer, we should approach interior designers? So
See, I would suggest it is not the stage of project actually. As a designer, I would like to know a product well in advance so that I've already understood and it. And sometimes nowadays we are, uh, this pandemic situation, and people feel okay if we do it on a virtual platform. But switch is one element. Sometimes you actually need to put it on and off to feel it also. Tick tick when you
correct,
do, the feel also matters. How the switches work. So all these things are not possible on virtual platforms. So just a catalog may not be enough. There are times when some companies are getting their whole switch plate palette to our office, and if we must have used that palette 2 times, 3 times, but even 4 times, 5 times, 8 times also, we actually insist them to come to the office with the palette, and we match them with our finishes, and we make sure, okay, this particular switch plate will go at this particular location, and this plain white will go here, and this glass plate will go here. So it is not just approving one range or something. We actually customize the plates as per the decor of that area. For offices, we may not do it, but for residential, we actually make switch as a part of our decor. So we customize at the last minute also. But if we had not known the range of the switch, we wouldn't have initiated in the first place, the entire range. So
correct.
it
Means
cannot be decided last also. It has to be absorbed before the project is conceived or before we start designing. We should already know the product very well.
True.
yeah.
That's my approach actually
Thank you
to
so
your
much,
question.
sir. I think you
Thank
very
you,
well
thank you,
answered
sir.
the question.
Thank you. And this is really insightful for us also. Whenever we approach architect and interior designer, definitely we should approach at the beginning of the stage or maybe more prior to the stage.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
sir.
thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you
Sir.
for
Thank
the.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. Sir, since we were talking about switches, I don't want to the audience. Sir, when we were having a dialogue, when we were just having a normal discussion, I do remember you mentioning something about a new technology wherein, in the elevators, there was some
Yeah, yeah,
technology
yeah.
mentioned. So I just thought if you would
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
throw
yeah.
light
Just
on it.
the other day, I saw somebody forwarded a video, and in fact, we were debating with this thing how to manage our lifts without touching them, and we had actually talked to the Mitsubishi company. Why don't you come out with some ideas where we don't have we have a touch-free switches and all. And then I just saw this video 3-4 days back, which shows how you can have a barcode with your mobile. You can just scan the barcode, and your mobile actually turns into a button for your lift, and you can go up and down, finish all your activity using your mobile without touching the switches of your this thing, right from where you're entering the switch, I mean the lift, and when you're pressing your floor, and when you're going out, actually the mobile does the job for you. So I was just explaining to Ankita, if this kind of a barcode technology can be taken further into switching technology, no, so there's a sky is the limit. You can always get in new technologies all the time. But I found it very interesting because we couldn't find a solution, and suddenly I saw this video, and I thought this is like, no, we are working on this school project and hospital project, and if obviously school we can't do that, but if in a hospital people are coming and they can use a barcode and use, they'll be feeling so safe. You are one
Yeah.
step ahead of your competition. So that kind of innovations keep happening all the time. So this was something which really I liked it. That's why I was sharing with Ankit.
Yeah, I think this is going to really help Mr. Bharat Verma, and also we have Mr. Chakri with us. He's a product designer. So I think at L&T we can try doing R&D.
For switches also, we should think on that line. Obviously, the technology is available. Just we need to enhance the technology, and we need to use actually, because our switches also can be operated through
Yeah.
through
We're
files.
using barcode for visit card, we're using barcode for payment gateway. So why not for switches?
Yes,
Very,
yes.
Sure.
yeah.
Sure,
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, coming to our next, means we've had, I think, quite a detailed information regarding the switches. Now, coming to our next question, sir, we just wanted to know that do you think that it's high time to make our designs more flexible to rectify the spaces so that we can have a psychological acceptance to them when modified? So I think this is in connection with what we spoke before. Uh, keeping this pandemic thing or beyond that. So just wanted if your view on this.
Yeah. So I think having gone through this scenario, we are definitely going to use these parameters. And I think we may actually do a mix of both. We would have some rigid spaces which don't allow flexibility, but we can combine them with certain spaces where we can be flexible in future. So we don't have to make everything flexible for this scenario. Some things can be the way they were, and you provide buffer spaces where you can play. You can provide some kind of a loose furniture which can be just taken out and replaced with something else over a period of time. And uh, also, while planning the architecture, also one could keep some extra multi-purpose zones. So you don't know what is the scenario that is going to come, and you cannot predict it today. You cannot say, okay, I can predict the future. So
Right.
when that situation comes, these multi-purpose zones, these buffer zones can actually act for your flexibility, and still we will have the best of the decors and the kind of way we used to live before. In some spaces. So if you can smartly balance these two things, and at the back of the mind, your social distancing norms and your good lighting, good ventilation are always going to play as a designer. So if you use this scenario with a very specific understanding the project and the situationally you take a proper call, I think this is the way for further. We have to somewhere consciously, unconsciously start planning for these things in a limited way so that we don't get caught off the card like we were this time.
Correct. Thank you so much, sir. So we've spoken about 3D designing. We've spoken about psychological part and all the different aspects of designing. I'm sure we have a lot of interior designers here with us. So for the benefit of the larger audience, I want to know how important is Vastu for you while designing spaces. Does it become difficult to follow all the aspects of Vastu due to, I believe there are some directions or placements, right? So, how important does it play while designing, and do you face any challenges?
Yeah, so Ankita, we never thought Vastu is something which is, a threat to an architect because we used to do a lot of crisscross planning and different levels in our college days, and always who does the most complex design used to be considered as the best designer. So, but when Vastu came, everything became very simple, and planning processes started becoming very, very mechanical actually. But what we thought was okay, the designing doesn't stop only at planning. So for us, we always have taken it positively because what I also realized in the very early days, this is not about some Vastu guy coming and scaring you about you will fall ill and all these things. You will lose all your money, and this is their business, so they have to uh, put it that way. But it is a pure science actually, and one shouldn't be looking negatively at Vastu because a lot of things, which side your head should be there. It depends on the biomagnetism about north repelling north and stuff like that, and the wind direction. They define which room and no corner of the house. I mean direction. A particular room should be there. The sun direction, wind direction, and there is also a lot of psychology and logics also behind so many Vastu principles. If you tell me anything that Vastu guy is telling, I will tell you why it is there, But unfortunately, in modern technology, we can't use it 100% because today we are not depending on the natural light and natural ventilation and all the elements of nature to design our houses. Vastu science has come to us from ages because our forefathers wanted people to, there was no science or nobody to teach them. So when you have a Vastu as a something that will scare you, automatically you will end up doing a house as per Vastu, which is beneficial to you because you have used the science behind the construction, and all the natural elements are going to help you. But in today's context, my thought is irrelevant. But certain things are still there in Vastu which have other scientific background, which are not connected with the natural forces. So it doesn't matter if you can't use it 100% or something like that. But whatever you can use in Milinpai Architects, we have a very, very clear cut laid down uh, bullets. Which side should be the head while sleeping, which side you should face, and they should not be mirror here, blah blah blah. So we just use it because we don't want to go on the wrong track and do something against Vastu and again come back and redo it. If you can design as per Vastu, fine. If we can't, we actually tell the client, okay, sir, your this particular room, it is not as per Vastu, everything else is as per Vastu. Does it matter to you? So he will give it a thought. He said, "अच्छा ये 4 room हो रहा है ना, ये ही नहीं हो रहा है ना. So if you do like this, then this is the problem. So our planning is going for a toss." So if you can negotiate with the client and understand the practicality, and he also gets the feeling, okay, I'm getting 80% as per Vastu. So he's also happy. He doesn't have to hire another Vastu consultant. And we are also happy because the planning, we are not compromised. And where it is going bad, we have told him and educated him. So, this is like a win-win situation we create. And we go on with it. We don't really become Vastu is the issue in our office. Like it's just like a process. One of the processes. If it can be followed well without compromise on the design, go ahead. If it obstructs your design, try to convince your client this is not happening. So we need to go along with it. But don't push it on the client and say, okay, we don't do Vastu and we don't believe in Vastu. Why should we do it? It's the client's prerogative to believe or not. It's not my architect who should be dictating these things to him.
Correct. Thank you so much, sir. Offline, sir, I would ask for those bulletins. Maybe if I follow the Vastu, maybe I'll start falling less sick. These days, I keep falling sick. So offline, I take those bulletins from you. Coming to our next.
If you believe in knowledge, there is a lot of things in this world you can believe in actually.
Yeah.
And if you go in that track, there is no stopping you actually.
Yeah,
right from tarot reader to everything you can approach and get yourself satisfied.
True that, sir. True that. We'll take that offline, sir. Coming, sir, since this is the session which we are conducting. That's from the fraternity and for the fraternity, the architectural interior design fraternity. And a lot of people get inspired with a lot of architectures work and interior designers work, and there are signature works of any architect. So looking at those designs, you can say, oh, okay, this design has been done by so and so architect or an interior designer. So our next question would be, sir, according to you, what is the difference between the inspiration and plagiarism in architectural design? Is there a thin line between both of them, or what is it?
Yeah, so this is a very complex and a delicate topic in design, in any design for that matter, not only in architecture or interior, you call it fashion design or you call it. So recently we are having big issues on somebody copying a conferencing tool directly, so these kind of things will happen. But see, the whole point is all the design world or this industry works on something that we are always innovating. Innovation happens when you have reached a certain level. So you build up something better than that. Then you reach a level, you innovate something better than that. So what happens is now, to what degree you are innovating and what degree you are copying is in your hands, basically. So if we are actually really discussing this subject, then there is a concept called innovation or invention, basically. So ideally, a designer, if he's innovating, he's already building on something that is already done before. And if you're inventing something, then you have no reference point. You are a master, you're a genius, and you're doing something which has never been done before. So every person has got his bandwidth. But principally and ethically, it is not really right to take away somebody's design and just tweak it a bit and pass it off as your own. So that is, I think, more about plagiarism, where people take a design and pass it off as their own. That is what a dictionary meaning is. So that is something which is ethically wrong. So having done that, we also need to understand is if you are innovating, you're also taking minimum risk, because you are already building on somebody's effort. And if you are inventing, then you are taking a big risk and you're facing a lot of challenges, and it requires a lot of guts to do that. So again, are you going to do all these things at the cost of the client, or you're going to take the risk factor on yourself? So this thing is also something that needs to be understood. So plagiarism will always lead to a mediocre path to success. People who copy, they are always going to be identified as guys who don't do something extraordinary. So that is the chance they are taking for themselves. So, and you cannot stop people from doing that, actually. You cannot look down upon them. So that is the route they have taken for themselves. And people who are masters, and they will have a totally different aura, and people will look up to them and they will say, oh my God, this is something totally different what you have done, and we never seen something like this. So this is actually your choice. And as I said, there is no question of ethical standards here. it is something that one has to take his own judgment. But one thing is that if you have a lot of experience behind you, and what happens usually is people who get more and more experience, they actually stop taking risks. And it is the young architect and designer who comes in the profession. He's taking a lot of risk and he's trying to do things, out of all his enthusiasm, and he wants to shine out of the rest, and he wants to do something different. And all that thing goes away when you get into a commercial situation where you are employing 25 to 100 people, and you've got commercial obligations. So then you start getting into that money churning situation where we have to of course, there are a lot of firms who do a lot of innovative work, but I'm just talking about general tendency. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is once you have the experience, you are actually better qualified to take risk and do something out of the box, which unfortunately is the other way around. So my advice to the experienced fraternities, that is the real time when you've already done for something for yourself and you arrived, and this is the time you should break away from the monotony of your work and start doing something which will be noticed and something will be suddenly in the invention category and no longer on the innovative category.
Correct.
So I think, yeah, we can't change these things, but we can at least lay a path for ourselves.
True that.
Yeah,
And
and that brings me to a very interesting situation. There's one very controversial situation which is discussed in design world is Pinterest. Every time, so many people refer to Pinterest as a copying tool. Yeah. So with Pinterest, what is happening is instead of the architect designing, we are finding a lot of architects, clients who are coming to the architects with the design. So they are actually, as they jokingly say, we are paying the architect to design what they have already designed. So we are actually coming to this situation nowadays. So we have the right to put our foot down, and we have the right to convince the client, okay, this is a good idea, and let me work on this further. So you don't have to outrightly reject them, but also you can also yourself when you're planning, like we were talking about psychology of the client some time back. So if you are really judging the psychology of the client, I think Pinterest is a very good tool to make a kind of a broad presentation to the client and try to understand what exactly is liking. There could be 5 beautiful bedrooms which are beautiful in their own way, but you don't know which are those 5 living rooms or beautiful bedrooms or the bungalows or offices that the client feel comfortable that it is his taste or his liking. So definitely we could use these kind of things to launch a certain idea, but if you are smart enough, you should know how to use them and change and tweak and twist everything in such a way that you come out with a totally new presentation, new idea, which looks nowhere near what you had started off, but it can be passed off as your own design, but you use some tools to get to know what the client wanted. So this is the way I would put this particular topic.
Thank you so much, sir. Well answered, sir. We have one question left, but that is more of a generic question to end the session with. So I would quickly like to go back to the audience and quickly take up questions. So now it's the time for a question answer round. We did have Miss Sveshka Yadav have a question. So Sveshka, are you there? Are you able to hear me?
Hello, Ankita.
Hi,
Good
Sveshka.
evening, sir.
Hi, good evening.
Yeah, sir. So firstly, I would like to mention that I'm completely fascinated by your humble thoughts, yet the contemporary approaches. And sir, I just wanted to ask when you just shared your school projects, and there was also a discussion upon the boards. It just popped up in my mind because me being an architect, it at times tends to be really challenging. I just wanted to ask you that how do you manage to be firstly to be on the same page with the client choice, and also does it also tends to be challenging at your end, like with the ergonomics in designing the spaces like of organic forms or toilet spaces, because you have shared that maximum projects, I mean more projects are of school only. So does it tends to be, sort of challenging at times in terms of ergonomics, though automation is of course taking over?
Yeah. So see, we have one particular zone we are not covered here is collaboration in this particular discussion today. So, we recently have been watching so many talented designers doing fluid designs and we also kind of idealize people like Zaha. And if you are working in so many verticals and so many kind of design themes and ideas and different wide variety of clients, so you can imagine when you're working with a jewelry showroom and you're working with somebody who's in a corporate office, and suddenly you are switching to somebody, the board of trustees who are doing school. So the bottom line of how to approach a design is the previous discussion what we had on psychology. You really need to place yourself in the client's shoes, and start understanding, if okay, I were the client, what would I be expecting from my architect? So if you have done that, so we always have students or young designers in office who will come up with a beautiful design, and I will have a one look at the design and say, oh my god, this is a good design, but I don't think the client will accept it. And then there is a situation where they don't understand why it is like that, but this is the reason that some good design may not be acceptable to certain client, because we have not really understood the psychology of that client, and what would he be expecting or what he would think is a good design. So having said that, what was the second part of your question? Can you just repeat the technology you said about automation and
Yes, sir. I just said,
ergonomics?
yes, sir.
Yeah. So see, coming to ergonomics is something. See, it is a part and parcel of your experience, and because you must have handled when we come out of the architecture college, we are
Yeah,
obviously not trained to do interiors at all. We
so
don't
true.
even know by the default what are the standard heights and standard dimensions of the furniture, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it is all out of lot of R&D and research and the hard work that you put in, that you can start understanding how the ergonomics of a particular project works. But when you are faced with a situation where you think, okay, now in this particular school project, for example, we are going to do some fluid designs in the ceilings, and we are going to do some fluid design in some loose furniture, which you have seen recently. And without any kind of a hesitation, I am going to collaborate with these young designer architects who are experts in these areas. And I'm going to say, okay, these 5 elements, I want you to work with me on this project, and they will be extremely happy, and we have already shared ideas and knowledge, and they are extremely happy, and they said, me share me the drawings with you, and we will already make a presentation to you. So this is how the world is moving ahead. If you are good at something, you work on that zone. And if you are not, even for example, interior styling, for example, so
Mm-hmm.
we may be doing it for so many years, and we have tried our hand. But today, if I see, there are so many smart young girls who have got a natural flair and talent to do all these things. And if I am an architect, then I can design spaces. And if I am an interior guy, I can design elements. And there are so many fine things. Obviously, I can't go from one bandwidth to other bandwidth, and claim that I'm an expert in the entire zone. For example, even the landscape, we were traditionally doing landscape with landscape architects. Now landscape has gone from exterior to interior also. So if you are not working with this kind of expert, then you should know how to put what kind of people at what zone, and ultimately make your project like a very well balanced, good design project. So
Okay,
does that
thank you.
answer?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, absolutely, sir. Sir, if you allow, I just wanted to ask another question.
Yeah.
So do you have any sort of a personal palette for elements of design or anything like that for such similar sort of projects? Do you prefer, or you just evolve and experiment? That's pretty obvious, though.
Yeah. That's a very good question, and we actually ensure we don't try to use the previous designs again in our office. Not now. When we started our firm, also it was
Yeah.
inbuilt psychology. If we had done a certain design, we had
Mm-hmm.
always a choice. Repeat that design for 5. So when I said I was doing 20% flats in one project, I could have easily done it that time also. But
Yeah.
we always thought we had to reinvent. I will not say uh, uh, invent, because now I define invention, but I will say innovate all the time. And I've always made sure my every project looks different from each other. Still, there are clients who come and say, your design has got a typical style, and then I feel offended, and I go into the detail and find out what is it that is a common factor which these clients have found out, and I make a conscious effort to focus on that area and make sure that particular elements are not getting repeated again.
Yeah.
So this is where we are coming from, and we cannot have a favorite style and favorite color and favorite pattern or something like that. We always have to, as a designer, we have to keep growing, and if
Mm-hmm.
you have to be very passionate about what you are doing, I think that the satisfaction and that fun that you get out of doing something new every day, that will be lost if we start doing anything that like a pattern. But of course, even I can identify so many projects of different architects, and I can look at it and tell, okay, this work is done by this architect, So it all it's a challenge how to avoid that situation for me actually.
So true, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
Ankita.
you.
Thank you, Sveshka. We have Ms. Desai have a question. Ms. Jalpa Desai, would you like to ask the question? Yeah, you have to unmute. You're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can hear you.
Continuing on the question, what Ms. Yadav asked you, that repeated, that having your own style statement and repeated in that, every design or every, all the projects. I know a couple of good architects, like a big architect, name a few. So, I mean, so if you see there, most of the projects had certain, like what she mentioned, certain style in which actually you can, see that you can say that it belongs to them. So what is the success ratio? Like having the typical your own style design, continuously, implementing, or just keep inventing, which is like, of course. So what is the more success? I mean, success ratio of these two?
See, to answer this question, I will actually take you back in time when we were in college and we used to follow master architects, and each of these master architects had a style. Somebody had exposed concrete, somebody had a glass architecture, and we used to identify these architects by their style. And that was a different era where the architect was known for his style and followed for his style, and he became an icon for that style. But today the industry has grown so much, and we are into a digital world now, and every day things are happening. And if you see in last 5 years, the same Pinterest has revolutionized our way of thinking, because at the rate at which the design world is changing and the ideas are coming in, and we are getting exposed to international ideas, so it is getting a whole maze of ideas, and you cannot afford to thrive by keeping to the same style in today's environment. So because people are asking you to be different. Like in my case, I'll tell you example. Now we get repeat clients. Okay, so you can one client I have designed a house for about 20 years back, for example. Then he came to me again after 15 years, and again he came to me after 5 years more. So 5 years across, they kept coming back for different projects. And when the last time he came to me, in fact, even before last, when he came to me, the same client, we had just started doing a minimal one project, one Jew. We designed a terrace flat on Jew. It was absolutely minimalistic design. It was the first attempt. In fact, the boys in my office, they told me, sir, you never do design like this. This is called Zen interior, and this is called minimal interior. And let us try this style of working, because you are never done like that. And if you allow us, we will work on this style. And after doing that style, and I got this client, he said, are you sure you're showing me your side?
Okay.
So that is the shock he got, from us, because he has seen our projects before that. And then when again he came back to me, we did his house in Omkar about 1 year back, and he said, I don't want to do something like that. My family is telling me, if you give the job again to Milind Pai, we should try some other architect, because his style will be almost similar. We should move out of that zone. We should try some other architect. But because the client had got a faith in me, he came and told me, this is what my family is saying. What do you say? So I told him, okay, allow me to do one presentation for you, show it to your family, and then you decide based on that. And I don't have to tell you the rest of the story. We obviously did his house. So all these things will never happen if you are not evolving and changing and improvising and keeping ahead with the trends. So these are the factors. So that's your call. You want to be identified as a certain design, and there are topmost designers in Mumbai who can be identified by their style. But if they can carry it, it's good for them. But at least for me, I think I will not be happy. Forget the commercial part of it. But I will not be happy, redoing the same kind of design again and again. I lose the sense of purpose for what I'm designer actually. Straight away.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jalpa. So we have a question from Ms. Srimati. Ms. Srimati, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Sir, it was interesting listening to your talk. Thank you so much, Ankita and Mr. Pai. My question is, you're designing somebody else's space, isn't it? You're there assigned to do somebody else's space. How much of client conferences? Because we are talking about style of the designer. But what happens is it is somebody's house, somebody's space. Shouldn't their taste and wishes reflect in their space? That is what I thought. So I just wanted to know how much of involvement of the client or how much of client's wishes is taken into consideration when a space is designed. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. See, I think I started off on this discussion on understanding the client psychology. So that exactly is the zone in which we really need to understand where the client is coming from, and every client has got a wish list and aspirations, and we actually quiz them. What is that you think is good design for you? Did you see something which is really fascinated you? Do you have any ideas, preconceived ideas in your mind? And this kind of this thing keep going on between us and the client in the first few meetings. And sometimes then we go to the second stage of sharing some of our past projects, because if they have seen our website or they've seen our presentation, we'll ask them, okay, which particular project you like, or no, what is your thing? Okay, if you didn't like this, what else did you like? So after doing that, there are always two kind of clients, and both the clients will get excellent result. At the third category, you may not get people who interfere and spoil your work, but the other two category are excellent clients as per me. One is a client who knows exactly what they want, and there are times when, as a designer, we will work with them and we will also learn certain things from them. We should be very absolutely humble to understand the client is not a fool. He has also traveled the world. He has seen things around. He has also got some knowledge of what is good and what is not so good. So if the client is really that intelligent, I think there are times when you have to understand, okay, he knows what he's talking, and give due respect to his idea. Of course, he can't translate his ideas into the reality. That is my job. But to understand and give due credit to his thoughts is very important. And there is another kind of client who say, okay, I have come to you. You are my designer, and I'm expecting absolutely the fabulous work from you, and I will not interfere. You do it your way. So that again puts a extra responsibility on my head to make sure I'm putting no double triple effort to overcome the lack of interaction with him, and I'm giving him a finished product. So in both these cases, we always end up with a very good project. So whichever project we can say today, they have come out really well. Either I'll give 100% credit to myself, or I'll give 100% credit to the interaction with intelligent interaction that I had with the client. And sometimes you'll be surprised. There are ladies who move around in very elite social circles, and they have got ideas and they have got sourcing, and they interact with each other because somebody else has done good projects in their family and friends, and they give us some ideas and sourcing which we never knew. So we always value such clients also. So these are the really good experience. But the third category is client who doesn't know what he wants, and he keeps interfering, he keeps spoiling your work. Then we have to put our foot down and say, okay, boss, if you don't allow us to do the work we want, then you are going to spoil your own work. And you will actually have to let us know when anybody asks you, of course jokingly, but we tell him that anybody asks you who did your house, you please don't tell our name. So this is the way we actually sometimes scare the client into telling you are actually messing up with the place, and you will end up with a very wrong solution at the end of the day. So
hello, sir. Of all the things, like you say, clients had given you a lot of feedback on this, and you enjoyed working on their ideas. Do you have any pictures of such spaces that you have worked on?
I do have, but I have not kept it ready in a folder now. It will take some effort to dig it out of my laptop.
Oh, okay.
I
Thank
think
you, sir.
Yeah.
Can maybe
Yeah. But you can message me or something. I'll share something with you, because definitely I would like to share what are the results when the client is also very evolved and very inspiring to us. It's a real subject. One should give credit to some good and smart clients sometimes. You cannot say, yeah, I know the best, I'm the best. There are times that people can actually teach you certain things in spite of all your experience.
Thank you, Ankita. Thank you, Milan. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir. We will call it a session. Before that, just last question from Ms. Yadav. On a lighter note, sir, do you prefer defining your design style in a liner? Maybe she's wanting to get a one-liner from you in terms of your design. So with that, we can call it a session. It has been a quite interactive session.
Yeah, as I put it, a design for your final occupant and study the psychologies. Actually, I practice it very intricately on my project. So I don't want to say anything that this is the best way to design. It's a very situational call, and a lot of analysis goes into every project. So rigid statement actually goes against that principle of the way I approach a design. So forgive me for that, but I actually think it's very situational. You need to, as a designer, control all the parameters that go into a project and analyze it very, subconsciously or consciously, and then find a right solution and path for that project, and then start working towards that direction.
Thank you so much, sir. Sweshka, I hope sir has answered your question. And yes, sir, thank you very much. I would like to thank everyone who's here with us on this Architectonic. It's been a really great interactive session, sir. And yes, we can go on and on, but yes, we have to conclude somewhere. It has been a good 1 hour, 20-minute session. And I would really like to thank you once again, sir. It's 8:20 now. Yeah, so thank you so much, sir, for
Thank you.
This interactive session. And thank you, everybody who's joined us today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah, same here, sir. Thank you so much. So we had this architect Dipen Soni. Thank you, Milind, sir,
Yes.
and thank you. Yes, just a thank you note. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks a lot, Dipen. Thanks a lot, Dipen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Stay safe, sir. Everyone stay safe.